Good morning. Welcome to the jungle where marketing reigns king. I'm your host, Dakota Ward. I'm joined here by my dear friend, Pastor Aaron Snow.
Good morning.
Aaron, good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Good to see you, brother.
I love it, man.
Your hair is getting wildly long. It fits the theme, the jungle, but it's quite dapper as well. So.
Yeah, I'm the resident lion. So,
okay. Yeah, so that's really your picture. They just...
that's right. Yeah, they just made me into a clip art.
What do they call that? Cartooned you or characterized?
Caricature.
Caricature. There you go. I knew we'd get there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I was trying to catch back up to you with my beard. I lost my doppelganger.
Yeah, I know. I got excited a couple weeks back after I spent a little time away and came back feeling like it was time for something new and fresh. So I did cut it off.
Looks good, dude.
Appreciate it.
Looks good.
Appreciate it.
Well, Aaron, pleasure to have you here. We'll hop into it. We'll go keep it lighthearted.
Yeah.
Share a few laughs, some stories, and
Love
talk
that.
about the church C3 North Atlanta.
Yep.
Kind of how marketing is in that and working.
Yeah.
And then maybe a little bit about you, your background, and we'll get into it. So, Aaron, tell us all about your personal background, maybe the church, its background, and its mission.
Yeah. So as Dakota said, obviously he introduced me as pastor, so I guess the cat's out of the bag. I appreciate the fact that most of you are like, really? He's a pastor? That's kind of my secret weapon, right? I just kind of look so easygoing and lighthearted. But nonetheless, my name is Aaron. I am a pastor of a church here in the Alpharetta area, actually, called C3 North Atlanta. A lot of people ask, what does C3 mean? Speaking of marketing, originally when we started the church 40 years ago this year, as a global movement, it was Christian City Church.
Okay.
And over the course of time, it started to become long, and so the world kind of forces you to shift, and so we condensed it down to C3, and so C3 stands for Christian City Church, and as I stated, we're part of a global movement that started in Australia in 1980, and so we just had our global family conference, which is of course because of COVID, all digital, which was kind of fun as well to be able to connect with literally people in churches all over the world, from Australia to Africa to Europe and America and beyond. However, my wife and I have been in ministry now for a little over 20 years. I got radically saved when I was 18. After living a life of drug addiction, gang relation, in affiliation. I wasn't your typical youth, as they say. I had a lot of challenges growing up, and obviously was very involved in things. I call it pharmaceutical sales. It fits the narrative a little bit, but the truth is that I was very addicted and very involved in that scene. And then when I was 18 in 1999, I came to Atlanta to visit my mom. She took me to this church called C3, and I met Jesus for the first time. I was radically saved, and from that point on, he's taken me on this most incredible journey. As Dakota, I've got an extensive background in corporate America. Have spent some time serving at various levels and roles, and still do to this day. Even though I'm a full-time pastor and in the ministry full-time, I still do some consulting on the side, and so it's short form. Kind of the makeup of how we got to this point today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us a little bit about just the mission behind C3 and how you're reaching just the local community, at least here?
Yeah. So, one of the things that my wife and I have always desired to do, and of course my wife Katie is, she was the prototypical pastor's daughter, always wanted to marry a bad boy. She always wanted to marry a pastor, and she met me, and she's like, "Wait a minute!" But lo and behold, God's been gracious to us, and we'll be celebrating 18 years of marriage this December.
Wow, congratulations!
And so she is the very best. But we have always just desired nothing more, nothing less to help people know Jesus personally, right? I think so often. When we represent Jesus, we then become Jesus for most people. And people live out of a revelation of who Jesus is through who he is for me. And that's okay for a moment and for a season, because it might be what he's done in my life that either encourages you, that maybe speaks to you, that helps you. But ultimately, our responsibility is to connect you to a relationship with him, to help you know Jesus personally. And then as a result of that, what you'll find is as you develop a relationship with Jesus personally, you discover that God's given you a purpose specifically. And he's designed that purpose. And so we believe that our purpose is truly to create a community that's focused on serving the needs of our community. It's serving one another. It's loving one another as Christ loves his church. But then it's taking that into action and actually serving the church. So our mission is to bring the light and life of Jesus to the darkest places of our community. And we do that a couple of ways, through gathering together as a community, in Sunday gatherings, which is part of the journey.
Sure.
We do that through what we call life crews. It's kind of our small group format, but that's not just, hey, let's do a book study together. It's like relational. It's deep, intimate relationship where we get to know you and you get to know us. And when you're in a crisis, you're the first, you're the first call. And when you're celebrating something, you're the first call. And when you go on vacation, you're thinking, man, I want to go on vacation with these people, because that's really doing life with one another. And then it's through service to our community. And our heart has been focused on that very thing. As a matter of fact, yesterday we were on the phone with one of the local schools that we support, and we're already planning and preparing to serve anywhere between 10 and 15 families specifically during Christmas in what we call our Light Tree Project, where we actually get names of families, and we get a list of the presents that they desire, and we help them. And one of the cases and stories, and this maybe gives you a glimpse as to our heart specifically, was a mom who's recently just become a widow. She's a mother of 7. Was relocated here because of her husband's company. He suddenly passed away 2 weeks ago. She's been a stay-at-home mom of 7 children.
Wow.
And now is literally trying to navigate through life as a single parent to 7 children with no income of her own. And going into the holiday season obviously only adds to that. And so that's one family that we're going to get to help through our Light Tree Project. And obviously there's so many more. But that's really the heart of who we are, is to be able to connect connect the community and the church together so that we might be able to serve the needs of our community in a way that's really meaningful, honestly, it's going to glorify heaven.
Yeah, that's a strong and powerful message, and I know that means a lot to people, especially right now with COVID going on, and the need for community, the need for those people in your life that you can do life together with. And so, for instance, that woman who lost her life partner, to have you guys come in and fill that role in a sense. I just know that has to mean so much.
Well, that's our prayer, and ultimately we don't do it because we want to be recognized. We do it because we want to glorify God. And obviously, as a result of that, he continues to give us opportunities to have favor in the community, to work with our local government officials and the mayor's office in some of these areas, and as well as local schools, particular where most of this is felt and seen and known. Teachers are experiencing it, and their students, and so to have an opportunity to really make a difference in those types of environments is something that we really cherish and are thankful for the opportunity to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, the cat's out of the bag. You're a pastor. I'm sure everybody knows I'm in marketing. So I want to know a little bit more about how marketing is integrated kind of into the church, just with you guys specifically. What are you guys doing currently? What do you want to do? How are you using just the digital world to reach people in this new kind of brave new world, if you will?
And I love this, and I know Dakota well, and I would probably be the opposite of your stereotypical pastor who's like looking for the grandiose marketing plan. The 7 layers to what marketing looks like. But one of the great quotes that I often draw from in these types of scenarios is I believe it was John Maxwell, and maybe he's the one that just said it 3 times and then took credit for it because somebody else said it. And that's kind of the joke amongst communicators, is that once you use something 3 times, then you can claim it as your own. But people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so what I have found, and what we find, is that in the act of serving our community, it's actually the greatest marketing strategy is not the message that we actually preach, it's the life we live. And the way in which we live is actually by how we care for one another. And so what that does is it creates, whether you want to call it a brand, whether you want to call it a sense of influence. One of the things I love my wife, she says all the time, if something were to happen to the church, would our community miss us? With the impact that we're having on our community, with the acts of service, with the going out of our way for one another, loving people through their trials and celebrating with people through their victories, would they miss us? Would they notice that we are gone? Not us as the people or the building, but us as the representation of Christ in our community, in our city.
Yeah.
And so when I think about what Jesus said, when he said, and I know business, church sometimes feels like it should be separate. I have a different perspective on that, having been in both worlds, and we can maybe get to that in a moment. But
yeah, I would love to.
But one of the things that Jesus said is, he said, go into all the world and make disciples. He actually didn't say go into all the world and gain a lot of followers. Right? He didn't say go into all the world and have the best looking graphic on your profile that will hopefully attract more followers. Now, that's well and good for some companies, so please hear my heart here.
Yeah.
But I think the greatest strategy around marketing is actually the way in which we go and serve one another, the way in which we actually show up for one another, the way in which we actually care for one another, which then translates into, let's just talk about reviews for a second, right? If we were to put that into context, the reviews would be that of, wow, the church showed up for me in my time of need and provided for my family when I wasn't able to provide for them, and they didn't want anything from me.
Yeah.
Or when my daughter was diagnosed with bone cancer, and both parents, not my daughter, this is a story, and both of the parents of that daughter were both laid off because of COVID. The church got together and came together and raised money to help cover our expenses for the rest of the year. Or when my husband suddenly passed away and I wasn't going to be able to provide Christmas for my family and my children, even though I needed so much more than just that, they thought of me, and they don't even know me. As a matter of fact, I'm not even in their church, but yet they showed up my front door to just love on my family and my children. To me, those are the types of things that we do as followers of Jesus, that Jesus commanded us to go and make disciples and to love one another, to serve one another, to care for one another, that then show up in the reviews, whether it's on Google or Yelp or Heaven. And in this case, for us, it's about that. And so what does that look like? It looks like being true to who we are and ensuring that our mission is very clear. Our mission is to bring the light and life of Jesus to the darkest place of our community. The Bible says that where there is darkness, that darkness cannot defeat the light. And so what happens often is that when we show up as followers of Jesus and the light is in us, which is just salvation, it's the relationship with Jesus.
Right.
People who then are struggling with an area or an issue in their life would represent darkness. And so what happens is they get discouraged, they get feeling a little awkward, they maybe start to think that you have an emotive, but all that is the darkness starting to quiver and to shake because the light has shown up, and now they start to retreat. And so as it were, when we talk about bringing the light and life of Jesus as our mission, we want that to be heaven invading the earth. And so when we think about the marketing piece of that, what is our mission? Well, it's never failed us. It will never fail us. And it doesn't need to change because that is who we are. If somebody say, who is C3? What is C3 about? To bring the light and life of Jesus to the darkest place of our community. Do we have a vision statement? Yes. Do we have a purpose? Yes.
Right.
But when it's all said and done, Jesus gave us he commissioned us. He gave us a co-mission. What is that? To go make disciples. What is that for us? To bring the light and life of Jesus to the darkest place of our community. That's in serving the needs of our community. That's in coaching a new couple through marriage coaching. That's through spending time with a family who's just gone through a tragic loss. It's celebrating a CEO who just closed a major deal that's going to be able to continue to give money back to the community of God so that we can continue to advance the kingdom and impact lives for Jesus. So at the core of it, it's around the mission. What is the mission? So all that to say, our focus has always been the mission.
It's powerful. In the same light, so to speak, marketing is, in a sense, portraying how best your company or your church or you personally can serve others.
Right.
And how do you convey that message and express that in a way that is meaningful but also personal to whoever it is that is either buying what you're selling or getting into whatever your mission is that you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And so for us here at Liger, we talk about being agnostic. We're industry agnostic but problem specific. Right. So for us here, it's what is the problem? What's the lock so that we can fashion the key and open it up. For you, you might say that what is the problem? Well, the problem is, what happens after life.
Right.
I have the key.
Yeah.
Right. It's in this book of 66 books.
Yeah.
And so, that's just so powerful to hear it in a way that you can also use it as marketing.
Yeah. I think what you're touching on too, and I think is so valuable to what you guys do, and what I've been learning about what you guys do,
Sure.
is the ability to not just come up with a marketing strategy, but actually coming up with a framework or a way in which we're able to tell the story.
Yeah.
What's the story?
Yeah.
Everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And what you alluded to just a moment ago was the problem is what happens after life. Yeah. I actually think one of the greater opportunities is also to help people discover what is it they're here to do while they're in this life.
Sure.
And so how do we effectively tell stories of life change that will unlock your potential for what you were created to do here on this earth, in this season, in this time? And one of the great things that I've discovered over the last several weeks and maybe months is that, as followers of Jesus, and this might be even just in the business concept, we often look at the problem and just try to get to the solution. But that's only half of the equation, the problem and the solution.
Right.
What's in between is the work that's required of us, or the opportunities that are in front of us to connect the problem to the solution.
Right.
And what we call that in the church space is the full picture of actually what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And it's not just to get as many people saved and hopefully we all get to heaven.
Yeah.
It's actually to see renewal come to the earth, so much so that life would be experienced and stories would be unlocked and purpose would be discovered, so that we can then partner with heaven, and heaven could actually invade the earth, which would bring about renewal. And ultimately what we'd find is that humanity as a whole would then invade heaven together as God originally designed it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the beauty of the marketing concept and the business concept. What's the problem? What's the solution? And what are the stories along the way that are going to help lead your customer to the solution?
Right.
That's what unlocks people, is stories, right? We can come up with 100 different buzzwords and they will work. Yeah. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I could tell you a story that's honest, that's real and sincere, that was met with a problem and was connected to the solution. And ultimately, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
Man.
Wow, now I get it.
I want that. I want that product, or I want to experience that in my life.
Sure.
Or, man, I can't wait to go out and buy that vehicle. Man, cars are great at it now. Like car sales, good companies. You see it all across the TV. They're putting stories into cars.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even know it's a car ad until the end, and Matthew McConaughey comes on and reveals his face, and all of a sudden you're just like,
oh, it's a Lincoln.
Yeah, it's a Lincoln. Yeah, exactly. All right. I mean, at that point, but you just were so pulled in. Publix, brilliant at that.
Yeah.
Just connecting you with the story of family around the table. And then all of a sudden you're like, babe, we're going to Publix. We're going to buy everything they've got because I want that to be my table. Because you see yourself in that table. You see your family. You desire for that. So if you don't have that, now you've seen Publix display what it looks like to have an intimate relationship around the table and have a meal with one another. And you're like, yo, this Thanksgiving, everything's coming from Publix because that's what we want to create in our home, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Problem, I don't have a home or a family or somebody to celebrate with. Solution, tell them a story about how to get everyone to come to your table, and what's the answer? Everyone comes and have this meal. So they hope, right?
I'm so excited for Thanksgiving.
Come on, man. It's my favorite. It's my favorite holiday.
It's my favorite too,
bro. I knew we're like we're like brothers separated from birth.
Yeah.
Except there's like 10-year gap. But anyways, it's cool.
And a few inches.
And a few inches. You're a little bit taller. I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I.
Well, you gotta have somebody to look up to.
That's right. Oh, so good.
Kidding.
No, man. I do. I'm inspired by you.
No. I'm inspired by you. That's awesome. I can't wait to. My girlfriend is actually coming with us to our Thanksgiving. We split. We either go to Alabama with my uncle's farm, or we go to Virginia. Yeah. And my other uncle has a bunch of property up there. But trying to figure out what we're going to cook and go up there. It's our excuse to pretend to be rednecks. For a whole day. And just eat as much food as you possibly can, and then sit by a fire.
Was there like a checklist for that to qualify you? It's like, I drive a truck. Check. I have long hair. Is that even? I don't know if that fits in the conversation or not.
I don't know if that fits.
Maybe.
But like,
could be.
A pair of cowboy boots.
Cowboy boots. Okay. Check.
Gotta have a shotgun because I think my mom, I just walked through the garage
Yeah.
and she bought, let's see, like 12 boxes of 80 clays.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my shoulder is for sure going to be sore.
Okay.
When
And do you have a
back.
gun rack?
I don't have a gun rack.
Okay, so
I'm not that redneck.
So there's no.
Remember,
there's
I
definitely-
pretend.
Yeah,
I pretend one
okay.
day a year.
I mean, that's to me,
Yeah.
that's like if all of those others would, if you didn't check all those other boxes, but you had a gun rack.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're digressing here. So there's a scene in Wayne's World, right? I don't even own a gun, let alone necessitate a whole rack, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that how it goes?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I love that
nonetheless,
movie.
it's a great movie.
Yeah. Party on, Wayne.
Yeah. Party on, Garth. We're in trouble.
I know. We're running down a different road.
Yeah.
But to go back to your analogy of a car, I was actually talking to somebody the other day who's from Colorado. You're from Colorado.
I
as
am,
well.
originally, yeah.
She came down here and she goes, there's something weird about the South. You guys just talk in similes and metaphors. So I'm going to speak to that and using the metaphor of the car analogy is connecting the problem and the solution. And I learned this the other day is you don't really change people.
Right.
You can help them discover what it is that you're trying to help them get into.
Yeah, or solve.
So the road between the problem and the solution is already there.
Right.
The marketing is how you help discover that road.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how you portray it,
Right.
what story you tell to make it connect, to get them to turn left at the fork and go down the correct versus going the wrong way, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where I'm at.
Yeah. And I think what's brilliant about what you just described, right, was staying with the car and the road analogy, is that if I said, hey, Dakota, we're going to go down to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and we're going to see the Falcons game.
And probably lose.
Well, they actually beat my Broncos, so I wasn't going to bring that up, but you just reminded me. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
Salt in the wound, which I happen to be there. But if I said, hey, Dakota, we're going to leave from here, where we are, and we're going to go to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium or wherever there, we're both going to get in our car.
Yeah.
And we're both going to go a different route, potentially, to get there. Unless we said, let's follow each other. But even still, you might have preferred a different route than I preferred, or your ways might have told you a different route than my ways, or I use Google Maps. Right. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, what the beauty in that, though, is that we had a goal and we had a destination.
Yeah.
The way in which we get to the destination is determined by our experiences, the stories that we hear, the directions that we receive, the information that we take in, and ultimately the decision to finally trust one of those journeys.
Right.
To hopefully result in us arriving at said destination. And so I think that's the beauty of what we call marketing, in that if we have the vision of whatever the company is, we have the starting blocks. Along the way, there's going to be you have different exits, right, that you go on to get gas or to get a snack, and you pull off to go to the bathroom. And those are just check-ins to ensure that you're still on track.
Right.
And I think any great company would be able to identify the vision and the starting block depending on the customer or the customer's experience.
Sure.
And then along the journey of that, hit the mic. Along the journey, start to establish some rest stops or some checkpoints that ensure that the customer is still tracking towards the vision. Because if they get off and then all of a sudden they get distracted by what's off that exit, and something lures them away from the vision, then we have to ask ourselves, is it the vision or was it just the check stop? We didn't have enough resource, we didn't have enough content, we didn't have enough interaction, we didn't have enough engagement, we didn't have enough people maybe, or maybe we didn't information at that check stop to ensure that they got back on the road to their destination. So keeping in with that theme, I think that's a beautiful way of breaking down for any small business, startup company. So maybe shifting a little bit into one of my other passions is business consulting and still staying very close to the marketplace. Our ability to tell the whole story and then put checkpoints along the way to ensure chapters, keep you on track towards the end of the story. So we can look at any different analogy and find that there's a beginning and an end, and along the way there's either chapters, there's rest stops, there's checkpoints to ensure that the person who you are trying to get to the destination is going to arrive there as safely. Might be different for every one of us, but so long as those checkpoints continue to guide and lead us towards that destination.
Yeah, it's powerful. There's there's myriad tactics of how to get to that, but one in particular, and I know you're a shoe geek just like I am. So if you ever go to Nike and you get to the checkout and then you close the browser or you leave,
Yep.
and it's connected to you're signed in
Right.
into your profile, you get an email.
Yeah.
And it's, hey, like,
Yep.
you are almost there.
Yeah.
Come back
Yep.
and finish your purchase.
Yeah.
So it's, there are ways to do that, to
Mm-hmm.
have those checkpoints to get you to that final endpoint.
Yeah.
To get you to that final mission, to solve that problem
Yeah.
of, hey, I need a new pair of sneakers.
Right.
Nike's sending you an email and says, hey, you still need those sneakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Actually, I got one last night. My son is needing new basketball shoes.
See, I knew it.
There was one in the cart. I left it in the cart because he decided he didn't want those particular shoes. And of course, last night, what do I get? An email from Nike.
Yeah.
Forget something?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. But it was, their
but now
way
you're
of
thinking about it,
saying,
yeah.
Did you really want these, or do we need to offer you something else? Right.
Yeah.
So it was twofold, I think, to your point. It's reminding you, but also enticing you back into the
Right,
the
back into the
vortex of
funnel.
Nike.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Which is, I can get lost quickly. I'm quite a fan.
Yeah, me too.
They know me by first name. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I go off the grid. I'm like John, Snow. in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I don't put my real name in it.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't need to know Dakota.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
The internet already has enough on me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So you talked about your background in corporate America, and we spoke on the phone a couple days ago,
Yeah.
and just kind of talking about what in the world we're going to talk about on this in the morning. And so, I'd like for you to kind of run back into that and touch on how your corporate America experience allowed you to get to a place of profound success just within the church and within your personal relationships with people. I mean, I met you in a business place.
Yeah.
Right? I met you in a retail shop.
Yeah.
And you asked me on a Saturday night, what are you doing tomorrow morning? I said, I'm going to church. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'm preaching at a
Yeah.
church. Do you want to come to mine?
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, how does your corporate background influence and touch in on the church?
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a great question, and I even alluded to it, a little while ago, that we live in a world where we so desperately try to keep church and corporation, or church and marketplace, or kingdom and marketplace in separate conversations.
Yeah.
We find this in the school place too, right? Like
Sure.
School, public school, especially in the kingdom of God, right? Or the church place. We try to keep those separate. One of a couple things that did just jump out at me. First and foremost, it truly is my revelation of who God is for me, right? There's no doubt about it. And it's out of that revelation that I've discovered how to truly love people, right? And again, going back to Scripture, maybe I need to change that to say quoting one of the great theologians of all time.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe that's more palatable for some.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty unapologetic about Jesus because of what he's done for me. And if you ever want to know more about that,
And that's how we're asked to be.
hit me up. Right. I'll be more than happy to share my story.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, I was given an opportunity this morning to share with somebody here in the building, and so I thank for those opportunities. But to go back to the original text. Or theologians' thoughts was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then the second is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. The only way in which we're able to love our neighbor is the way in which we love ourselves. And the only way to love ourselves is actually have a revelation of who Jesus is for us.
Sure.
No, otherwise, we probably tend to operate more in the, I don't know if I really love myself.
Yeah.
And if you don't love people, then it's likely you might not even love yourself. Or you love yourself out of the wrong context or for the wrong purposes, right? That's a whole other conversation another day.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, now it's given me a desire to connect these worlds that for so long I was even told when I was in the corporate world, hey, we know that you're a youth pastor. We know that you serve in your church, but there's a place and a space for that. And this isn't one of them. Okay. So you're ingrained in that. You're trained to think that way.
Right.
But truth be told, Jesus actually called business leaders, influencers, accountants, fishermen, right? He called guys that were relevant
Right.
to the world in which he was trying to reach.
Right.
And so the difference is that we can sit here in kind of our church bubble and go, well, I'm only going to hang out with church people.
Yeah.
I'm only going to work for a church company.
Yeah.
Or I can recognize that my love for God and my love for my neighbors has led me to then love all people and to use whatever experience or influence that I have to help them be connected to a relationship with Jesus through just me being friendly.
Right.
I don't necessarily need to pray for you.
Yeah.
I'm not walking down the streets of Alpharetta with my Bible going, Dakota, in Matthew chapter 28, it says, go into all the world and make disciples, so I'm going to make you a disciple. That's weird.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Yeah. Please. That's weird. But what's not weird is walking into a cigar store with a couple buddies and asking you questions about cigar, which is where we met, and getting to hear your passion about cigars. And I know very little, but enough to at least hang around.
Yeah, enough to be dangerous.
And then enough to just open the door for conversation that engaged us in a way that was never based on, hey, I'm a pastor and I pastor a church. It was based on, I just want to connect you with you where you are.
Sure.
And let you know, man, you're seen and you're known and you're valued. That's it. It's just planting a seed that somebody's going to be seen, known, and valued. So then in the context of marketplace and kingdom place is what I identify, or the kingdom of God, I actually think we have an opportunity to connect the two and call it the kingdom place. So that now when we think about going into all the world and making disciples, well, what is the world that we're called to? Some of us are actually gifted and called to be in the marketplace, in corporate America. Right. Some of us are actually called to raise truckloads of money to help advance the kingdom of God. Some of us are called to be teachers. Some of us are called to be doctors. Some of us are called to be stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads. Some of us are called to be athletes. Some of us are called to be professionals in singing or dancing or writing, whatever the case may be. So when we talk about going into all the world, well, what's the world that God's called you into?
Yeah.
You don't have to leave that world on the shelf on the weekends and pick it back up on Monday. You can actually bring those worlds together by having a revelation of who God is and know that he's called you and positioned you to go into that world to bring the light and life of Jesus, which just says to show up for people, to be kind to people, to be an ear to people, to just be present sometimes for people.
Yeah.
All of a sudden that has this radical transformative work. I love one of the things that Dr. Rose said, the previous superintendent for Fulton County Schools. He said, we know that there's a legal line between schools and places of worship or houses of faith.
Yeah.
The problem with the world that we live in is that everyone gets to that line, and instead of pulling up a chair and having a conversation, we run the other direction, which essentially means we get nothing accomplished.
Yeah.
I want to be about bringing chairs to that line and sitting at the table because we all have the same goal in mind, for our children to grow and discover and to become all that they were created to be. The world would say in education, the kingdom of God would say in the purpose and plans of God for their life.
Right.
It might be a difference of vision or a different end goal, but ultimately it still leads to the same forward steps.
Right.
And so now we have a better, healthy conversation, and now you see places of worship and schools coming to the same table going, we just want to support you. We want to help you. We want to provide for families in need. We want to be able to support you when you're in need. We want to love on your staff and your faculty. We want to bless them because we know they don't make a lot, but they give more than anyone knows that they give. So how do we be better at recognizing that there's an opportunity and we all have the same goal in mind, to love one another, to encourage one another, and to ultimately see our families thrive, our community thrive, our businesses thrive, our schools thrive, our medical places thrive, which then goes to say, if we were truly to care for one another in that way, how much different would our world be today? How much of a difference would we make together today? And so that to me is how we start that conversation. There's so many practicalities to it, but I think it just starts with that.
Yeah. And what a time to express that message together.
Yeah.
I think that is needed now probably more than ever, or at least in recent history, and especially in my life, just the need to be together. So I talk on, because I'm also in sales here, so my first questions to the prospect are who are you, as far as marketing goes? Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it?
Right.
And why should I have you do it for me?
Right.
If the answer is as simple as I'm here for you,
right.
I mean, the connection is already there.
Right.
Because it's simple.
That's it.
Right. And so being able to say that and ligarize it, so to speak, to
I like that.
Make it creative,
right,
to where it connects on a couple of different levels.
Yeah.
Right. That's the role of marketing, in a sense, is how do you connect that message to the target audience to where they are like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I need that. Or I want to experience that. Everybody my age is all about experiences.
Right.
So how do I experience that? How do I get that into my life?
And I think the way we do that is just shifting to the business concept for just a second. And it's no different than the church. It just so happens to be done in a different way.
Right.
My sons, I have a 12 and a 14-year-old son, and we have been strategizing and scheming this business concept called Support It Local. And one of the things that we realized during COVID and the pandemic when it first started was the impact it was going to have on small business. And so as we stopped to kind of reflect, and we have a love affair for small business. We just we support we date our local company, like our local city. We date every business. We try to know every new restaurant.
Yeah.
We try to know every new boutique store, because we want to love them. We want to help them get their name out. And so as a result, what we found is that some of those places that we love and adore, and the owners of those places who've become our friends, were being impacted in a great way. And so we were sitting around a table one night at a restaurant that we frequent in Alpharetta. And you could probably guess any of the restaurants in Alpharetta, that's probably the one we were at. And my son started to ask, Dad, where do you think they get their ice cream from for that dessert? And I said, I don't know, buddy. That's a great question. And then my other son said, where do you think the coffee comes from for that coffee you just had? I said, I don't know, buddy. That's a good question. So we asked the server, and they told us. Well, the answer was a commercial or nationwide or national brand.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I work for a national brand. I get it.
Yeah.
But then this is what so spoke to me about my sons. They said, well, what if they got ice cream from Jenny's that's just down the street? They're local.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a way for the local companies to support each other and still thrive in a season like this? And then my son says, well, what if we went over to Valor and talked to the guys at Valor and got them to serve coffee in their restaurant? Oh, Valor are my boys.
Yeah. Love those guys.
and got them to serve their coffee in this restaurant.
Yeah.
I said, man, that's a great idea. And so you think about that in the context, what's the problem? Well, the problem was a pandemic. What's the solution? Coming together and supporting one another. So whether it's fresh produce, whether it's giving away my business idea, somebody's going to take it and run with it, but that's okay. Just give me a percentage, or actually give my boys a percentage, because it was their idea.
Yeah, it was their idea in the first place.
But the interesting thing to me though, Dakota, is that if my 12 and 14-year-old can see that just by the way we love our neighborhood, the way we love our community, and the way we love every restaurant and every small business in our community, and then come up with a solution that actually might allow for small businesses to still thrive and flourish because we've recognized the opportunity to support one another.
Right.
So if you have an ice cream, or you have a coffee, or you have a produce, or you have a product that can better another company in this season that's in your local neighborhood, and every suburb did that together, man, how much difference would life be? How much more of an impact would we have? How many businesses would we have saved?
Yeah.
How many businesses would not just be getting by, but thriving just because we came to the table and said, "Hey, we're gonna support one another here, and I'm gonna provide you my coffee. I'm gonna provide you ice cream, and you're gonna provide me this." And all of a sudden, now we've created this sense of community, this unity.
Yeah.
Community is actually broken down to having a common unity. So we talk about in the marketplace, in our local suburbs. What do we want? We want our communities to thrive.
Yeah.
So we have a common unity, and the way in which we do that is to come together and to support one another, even in times like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw it firsthand, kind of on the other side of the spectrum. I just got back yesterday. As you know, I was in the Mississippi, great state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
I went to Mississippi State, so I love giving them a shout out.
Yeah.
Go Dogs, even though we're not very good this year. But
Neither the Georgia Dogs, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, we'd be better if I had a quarterback. Do you play quarterback?
I did when I was about this tall.
Okay.
And then I got really tall, and so they pushed me out to the side and said, "You can catch it."
Put a call to Kirby and see if we can. Anyway, go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah.
Mississippi.
So in Mississippi, we drive to a town called Natchez, and if you're familiar with Natchez, they're a very big small town.
Yeah.
And so my parents love going back there. My dad has ties there, and so he's got a business there, and so we're there all the time.
Yeah.
And so we went back to go meet with a woman who has a restaurant there, and a very successful one at that. And so she's been pouring into the community left and right.
Yeah.
And, COVID hit, and granted, it was a Tuesday night.
Right.
But still, there was not a soul in the street.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
And daylight savings maybe had something to do with it. I mean,
Right.
it's pitch black at 4:30 over there. So,
Right.
But we're walking around and there's no one around. And my mom goes, this is just so bizarre.
Right.
We're almost in a twilight zone.
Yeah.
But then as you drive around and you look at the houses, it's for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale.
Wow.
Because maybe there's a lack of community.
Right.
And a lack of
Wow.
that one another, that
Care.
serving,
Yeah.
and allowing that small community to continue to flourish in a time of need.
Yeah.
And so seeing that on the other side, as well as back to your boys and how that would
Right.
Work.
Yeah.
That's a message that I think should be shared.
Right.
And they should still get their percentage.
They should, absolutely. And if anybody steals their business idea, I'm going to be in big trouble. So please call me first, at least.
Yeah.
And I think if we were to bring it all back to the beginning, when the church was established, that was actually the church.
Yeah.
What we just described from a marketing and business perspective was actually the church. And that to me is what's beautiful about this season that we're in, that we have an opportunity as the church to truly be to be a people that unify, that bring together, that support one another, that care for one another. We have one of our distinctives is that that there would not be a person in our community who was in need. We want to be known as a church and a community that it would be said that there was not a person in need. That's a tall order.
Yeah.
But I believe that if we truly partnered with one another, we cared for each other the way that Christ cares for us,
right,
and we actually lived Christ-like community the way that it was originally designed. What we've been doing up to this point, I'm not going to sit here and go through the critiquing and the judging. That's not my place. I'm just here to love.
Sure.
And to unify. Yeah. And to point people to Jesus. And when we do that, what happens is we see community, common unity, neighborhoods thriving, families thriving, businesses thriving, people thriving, and ultimately the kingdom of heaven getting the glory.
Yeah, I love it. Aaron, we're getting a little short on time. Is there any kind of exciting news or just a relevant story that you might want to share just about kind of how you're growing, not only yourself, but the church in and of itself? Is there anything new and exciting that you want to share?
I think as most would probably be doing this, now that we're entering into the post-COVID era. I think we're hearing that a little bit more regularly, right? Post-COVID era.
Yeah.
There's first and foremost, the word that I'm deleting from my vocabulary is unprecedented. So we could just all agree, just delete that from vocabulary. It's been overused, run out. But I think the other beautiful thing about if we looked at the glass half full, if we're going to use a modern day analogy, if we looked at the glass half full, somebody said, there must be water in the glass, so why not take a sip? And so what does that sip look like for you? What is that sip going to represent for you? How's it going to change you? How's it going to mark you? How's it going to nourish you? Because water does what? It quenches your thirst.
Right.
So if we're looking at COVID, post-COVID, and we're recognizing that there's at least water in the glass, or we're using the analogy glass half full mentality. And I know for a lot of people that's hard because there might be some people that are on the other side, glass half empty.
Sure.
But nonetheless, whether it's half full or half empty, however you look at it, there's still water in the glass. So take a sip. We just talk about the glass of water and we just leave it on the table. Like we can't touch it. But if there's a glass of water there, have a sip. And allow that sip to touch you, to impact you, to mark you. Yeah. And allow it to nourish you in a way that's going to cause you to change something about your past. That's going to shift maybe the way you thought about somebody or something. Maybe it's the way you approached your business before, or the recklessness that you approached your business in terms of your time and attention that caused you to maybe sacrifice your family. Maybe it's the focus on things that don't actually truly bring you any health or wholeness or joy in your life. Allow that sip to be an opportunity to reflect and to shift and to change what you prioritize in your life, and ensure that those changes are going to lead to a better you. I believe and pray that they'll lead you to a closer relationship with Jesus. But if nothing else, they'll just lead you to a place where you'll find more joy, more hope, and more love, as the Bible describes, in the world around you. So if the glass is half empty or it's half full, take a sip and watch what that sip might do.
Yeah, it's making it real. And so, I follow a little bit of Stoicism. And I like to compare, the teachings and the sayings and everything that is in context, but comparing them between Christianity and Stoicism.
Yeah.
So Marcus Aurelius said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes to people nowadays.
Totally.
We live in the clouds.
Yeah.
So having the analogy of the water and taking that sip, making it real, I think is very pertinent to what's going on. But guys, we're we're about out of time. So, Aaron, thank you so much for
Man,
coming out.
What a pleasure and an honor, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Had an absolute blast here
Likewise.
in the jungle. So, guys, I'm Dakota Ward, host of The Jungle, where marketing reigns king. It was such an honor to have you here, Pastor Aaron.
Yeah.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
Yeah. Awesome.